Would you like to know how to rig a slackline inside of your house? So we're going to slack snap some bolts, hangers, and screws, and we're going to do some dynos here in the living room on the rodeo line. So let's go over all of it on this episode of How Not to Slackline in Your House. Hi, I'm Ryan Jinks, and welcome to my living room, where the Museum of Slack Life lives. I have 3 slack lines in here. We're going to show you how not to build basically indoor anchors, because I think I've done almost everything you can do wrong, and I've got the holes to prove it. So let's go over different ways to put in anchors, and then we're going to brake test them on the slack snap machine, because I got eye bolts and screws and some long ass bolts, LABs. So I use a low stretch webbing, and this is from Rad, which is also this Rodeo Web Block from Rad. And it only has a working load limit of 4 because these back plates are so small and thin, but it's an awesome lightweight web block, perfect for rodeo lines. And sometimes if you have this up really high, you can have your tail hang down and you can adjust it. So why do you have 2 bolts, you ask? So the story is that sometimes you miss the stud. In this case, there is a stud right here, but it missed the stud and the top header, it was right in between for like a year. And basically one day it decided to come out and the whole thing fell. And I was standing in the middle and I just dropped on my feet and I was fine, but that could have been bad. So basically I now have 2 bolts for redundancy. And you can see that the way I have them placed, that when I'm in the middle of my rodeo line, that it's pretty even. If you pull down like this, obviously I'm not going to have equalization, which is a myth, by the way. So as I get on it, you can see how they equalize, and I'm pulling on both. Now, they don't have to be equalized as much as if one decides to come out, it would partially come out before the other one took over, and you wouldn't have a catastrophic failure, which if you're doing like shoulder stands or something, like you could get hurt. So you definitely don't want your anchors failing in your house. Now on my useless midline in my living room, as all you can do is practice pull-ups, I have a bolt going through this hanger that's quite long, going through several of my studs up here. But because I don't want, what happened on that line, I basically have, let's see here. It's kind of redundant. This is redundant, being that it's a whoopee sling that goes to that bolt over there to this bolt over here. And that will hold this in case something like this were to fail. And most of the time things fail slowly. And so I can just keep an eye on that. This is just tape to keep my tail nice and neat. It's not obviously holding because that's not how M steel works. Now, because I have this register here, I couldn't do too much other than just go through the wall, which goes into my attic, because my header is about here, right? So I had to go above my header to get inside of my attic, and I could basically build my anchor behind this wall. So this is redundant. It just is redundant on the other side of the wall, which I'll show you. You definitely want to have your tails longer than this. This is a bad example, because if this does slip, I'm going to get hurt. But basically, that's how I've got my midline. I don't stand on this because my ceiling is right here. But you can do a lot of fun stuff with this. Okay, so I'm in my attic. This is the bolt. And I added this board to go between this stud and this stud. And my air conditioner vent goes right below it. And what I did in order to reinforce this board, and this bolt's super strong enough, so I'm not worried about making the bolt redundant. I just don't want to damage my wall. And so what I did was I added this board to pull on this, which goes up to this beam, this header that is super, super strong. So it's pulling on this, screwed in there. This goes back to this one back here, which is also another supporting brace. So it's not just pulling on these studs, but all kind of in unison together. And that is how I kind of reinforce my wall in order to make that safe enough. Now my hanger is getting bent on the other side into the sheetrock, which is not too hard to repair, but it's safe when you get on it. While I'm up here, I'll show you another thing I did in my attic. This is above my garage ceiling. And what I did was I put this bolt, not through my stud down here, but through this 4x4. But it is right next to this stud. It's right next to this support, which goes into my ceiling, which I did not add. That's part of the house. And this way it's pulling directly on structural parts and it's not bowing down my ceiling. And I can put, I would say, body weight on that. I'm not trying to shock load anything. My bolt is on the other side right there. So that's my attic access. And I have these bolts that you just saw that I can clip things to, put ropes in, put rollers in, hang things from. So that's nice for a lot of reasons. I don't know why you'd be slacklining directly off your ceiling, but that is an option. And of course, you can have a freestanding slackline like I have here from Moore. It's their slack puzzle. It all comes together. We have a whole video on me unboxing this, putting it together, and we put a dyno in the system, which was pretty fun. So you can check out that episode. Something that's really nice to have is not your slackline in the way all the time. And so basically I have this clip and point up here that I can use. It's not really load bearing, even though it is in a stud, because sometimes when people don't know, they grab, they just grab on it, but keeps it out of the way and I can walk down my hallway without having a slackline always in the way. Now we built last year the GDBY nets in this space and I had anchors there, and here. And what I learned about this was super interesting, was it was pulling, the bolt hanger was about here. It was pulling around the corner and it twisted all of this and this corner bead and stuff. I had to retexture this whole corner. This wall almost got damaged because the net, as you weave it, gets tighter and tighter. And we didn't realize that, and it saw about 4+ kilonewtons. Now, this Lodi Slack House sign that Lorenzo commissioned Nevada Slackliner to make, I used that. That was the hole I had for the bolt. So that's the wire I used to just plug it in outside, repurpose the hole. That's super awesome. But I filled all these holes, and I'll show you the plate that I had on the outside because I wanted to disperse the weight so my wall doesn't get caved in. It's not just about your bolts. It's not just about your ropes. It's also about the strength of your walls. This is a catio, and this is rain. That's our bolt busters. So I put this plate here between studs here and studs there. So it's pulling on 2 separate studs since I wasn't able to get higher for the, to get closer up to the header. Because if you're pulling against the ceiling, it's not gonna bow in as much. So that's kind of how we repurpose that. But as you can see over here, that I still have that one installed. What I did was I just refilled the hole and I'll take it down later. I decide to never use it again. So how much force does a slackline see in your house? Now, if you're just doing like a primitive setup and you're keeping it, a little bit tighter, might be 2-ish kilonewtons. But what does a rodeo line see? So we're gonna find out with the line scale 2. Bobby got the app to work on his phone. We're gonna actually show you the graph of what happens when I'm playing on the line. So we got fast, we got 0, and now we've got peak. So let's find out what peak load is. I'm going to clip it to my LFK, my little fucking nut up here. Turn that around. Okay, readjusting tension, and we've got it going. Let's see how much force this gets. There we go. Bobby is rodeo lining. What do we got there? We peaked at almost 1 kilonewton. This is pretty cool. All right. Oh, hang on. Bounce. Give us a... Oh, well, you got to be straight up and down. Hang on to me tight. Oh, okay. So Bobby's getting about 1. There's Bobby's graph. It's pretty cool. You can save it to a CSV file, and it's live reading again. Let's see what happens if I can hold 2 phones at once. Look at this. Oh yeah, cool. So that's how the app works. So I almost got to 1 kilonewton on our rodeo line. Now that we know that you only get about 1 kilonewton on a rodeo line, and I assume about 2 kilonewtons with a primitive line, don't use ratchets in your house. You basically need to find the center of your stud. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Surprise, I've been a painting contractor for 18 years. So we're going to go over how to make a hole and how to not fill a hole, because people do it wrong all the time, and I can show you that. So this is a stud. Actually, we're going to use this in the Slackline machine. It's actually pretty cool how we came up with this. In case you don't know how walls are made, these are behind the sheetrock. So we are going to find the center. If you don't find the center of your wood and your screws sticking out of the edge, you're going to lose a lot of your strength, and you kind of want that. What happened in the hole over there was I hit the top of this board where the header was. And so it wasn't fully in this or fully in that. And after enough cyclic loading, it basically came out. So it's very important to find the center of that. That's where we're going to go over right now. Stud finders, they're almost good enough. So we're going to use this to find where our stud should be, and then we will double check our work. Now, a couple giveaways, as the studs usually start either at the beginning end of a wall or near light plates, because that plug is screwed one side or the other to a stud. So I have one about right there, and I'm trying to put something in right here. It says right there and right there. So we're going to find out if these lines are correct, because this isn't always right. And you definitely want to start off of a stud and then find your stud. Don't use a Sharpie. Use a pencil. Sharpie bleeds through paint. Now, I do this so often that I literally tape a nail to my little housewife hammer here. We're going to use my favorite stud finder, this guy. So you don't have to make 17 holes finding your way across the wall. You only need to make one approximately where your line is. That is hitting a stud. So we're in a good spot. What I'm going to do is angle it. And I've missed the stud. So I know this line is the edge. And I've only made one hole to figure that out. Same with this side. I went through. So I'm just going to angle towards the wood. Nope. I'm going to angle towards more. It's about right there. And I can just basically feel about where that stopped. So I'm going to add my line a little bit closer. Hint, this is 1.5 inches wide. So I'm verifying that my lines do make sense with the width of a stud. Now you don't want to put holes in pipes or electrical wires and stuff. Just kind of be mindful of where you're plugging in. If you're like the bathroom's on the other side of the wall, be careful. So you know how they make everything look easier on YouTube than it is in real life? It's because I just spent 5 minutes preparing all of this. Anyways, I'm going to use this 1/4 inch cheap lag bolt. And I put it on a washer on a zinc plated hanger. Now, if you've ever watched my Bolt Buster episodes, you know how much I hate zinc plated stuff, because it doesn't belong outside, but it can work on the inside. Now that we know where our stud is, I'm going to use a 3/16 drill bit. So I have a little bit of the threads are still going to engage in the wood, but this isn't so small that it's splitting your stud. So I'm going to put right in the middle, and I feel the stud right there. The length is correct. So now I'm going to drill it in. This is an impact drill. You don't want to go nutso on it, but you do want it to be tight. Make sure it engages. Now, if you drill it in too much, it's going to squish your sheetrock. It's already going to damage it a little just because you're pulling outward and the top of it's going to go back into the wall. And I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. That's pretty good. Now, if you're trying to rig something semi-tight, then you might want to use a stud that's over here, or you might want to go up a little and create more of an equalization. Rodeo lines are near the ceiling, so you can see In my house, I did wall and ceiling, and it kind of gives me a little bit more peace of mind. On the SlackSnap machine, we're going to test different sizes of lag bolts, eye bolts, and just ordinary screws. So we'll see how strong this is. I don't know yet. I'm actually really excited to find out. Remember that your sheetrock is about 1/2 inch thick. So you're not going to get, you're only going to get from above my finger up, engaged in the wood. And the first like 1/4 inch in the wood doesn't count. So you really do want some meat in there. This doesn't take into consideration the sheetrock, but you can see that you could actually put a longer one in if you felt like it was necessary. Now, it's not about the breaking strength of this pulling out or the hanger or anything like that, or the strength of the lag bolt, but your wall. If you're pulling on the middle of your wall, kind of like I was when we were only rigging the net about this high in order to weave the GGBY net. If more than one person got on, I could see the walls bending in. And I actually damaged that wall over there. I had to fix some stuff, but it wasn't too bad. Just be mindful of just installing in the center of a wall. If in this case, if I was in that corner over there, I'd be able to put one bolt on that wall, one bolt on that wall, and they're actually working together. Just keep in mind that you could actually pull in a wall if you were putting enough force on something. How not to fill a hole. Don't use this. When you use this, you create a flat spot. And when that gets painted over, it looks dumb. You basically filled in the texture. Now, if you have a flat wall, that's different, but the wall I'm dealing with here is textured. So I'm going to use it to open up my shrink-free, lightweight spackle. It's water-based, it's not oil, it's not thick, weird putty. So I'm going to start by putting it on there, but you're basically going to fill the hole and then wipe off all the excess without touching the hole with your finger, otherwise it concaves. So you want to fill in, you want to squish it back and forth so it goes in the hole and it's not just covering the surface. Wasn't expecting this channel to turn into a home improvement show. But what are you supposed to do when you're stuck inside, right? Then I wipe off the excess around that. Make sure you wipe it all off. And when you go to paint that, you won't see the holes. How do I know that? Because I had a lot of holes in here from that net. Can't see them. So you can see here that I filled all that in, but I rubbed all of this out without touching the holes, so that will not show up later. This is my touch-up paint. Never shake a can without firmly holding the lid down. Think about it. Let's say you're renting a place and you're not either supposed to put holes in or you're not supposed to leave a bunch of holes and you're supposed to touch it up or something. Don't use a 3-inch brush. Like, look how small this is. I learned this in kindergarten. It's called finger painting. And now I'm just going to take my finger, touch it a little, and I can actually do this with the spackle still wet a little. Might show up, might be a dull spot, but for the most part, that will be done. And if I kept my holes to a minimum, I know this color is correct, but even if your color's not super correct, that's not a really big spot. And make sure you don't use semi-gloss on flat walls. Like, really check the color. If you're not sure about your paint, your touch-ups, or the can you bought, do a test spot, like in the corner near a baseboard, and find out if it's gonna work before you like do it in the middle of a wall. Little tips for painting. And obviously I don't want to wipe this on my shirt. That's a bad habit. So if I don't have a rag, you can just rub until it's dry. And both hands are clean in just a moment. Magic. Welcome to SlackSnap. If you haven't seen this machine before, it's basically a 20-foot rectangle with a large set of pulleys on one side and a dynamometer on this side. Now we bypass the dynamometer in this case. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So instead of connecting to this dynamometer and then the sample goes here and then flies, we actually put a span set on my support bar here and on both sides. And this 2x4 fits perfectly in here. And I can actually pull here, here, and here. I can actually get several samples inside of this one 2x4 before I have to cut another one. And that will be how we do our samples. And I'm going to connect a line scale directly to our, directly to our samples. And we're going to find out how much force it takes to pull out these bolts. On this side, we have our 20-to-1 pulley system, a Costco winch, and a lot of AM steel. But basically, what we're going to test today are basic 1/8 inch cheap standard screws. These ones are pretty long because you want to have some meat in the wood, but this you don't even really have to pre-drill a hole if you're going into studs. I don't think that's going to be very strong. We are going to test eye bolts as well in case you don't want to try to obtain a few hangers if you're just trying to do something simple. This is not long enough to go in through your sheetrock and into the stud, but since I'm going directly into the stud, we are going to be able to find out if this unwelded eye opens before it comes out of the wood, which I highly think it will. And then like we saw in the house, you got your 1/4 inch and 5/16 inch lag bolts, which I'll just share this hanger for. And then we have 3/8 inch fatties, which will, we tilt this sideways, will go in there, and it really goes all the way through. And I'm pretty excited, like that would be like the most bomber thing that I could screw into the wood. But if you wanted to go all the way through, we do have these options. This is also something that can simulate if you got this size of an eye bolt, but you can see here it's not welded. And we're just gonna put that through and basically see when this opens up. The second one we have, we're gonna go this way, find out what happens when you use a welded or cast iron, I don't know what that is. It's galvanized, it's 5/16 closed eye to see when this breaks versus that side. And then lastly, we're going to, and this is what I built my GGBY anchors with. And I was more worried about my walls, which did prove to be the weakest link, but that is a 1/2 inch grade 8 bolts. I think it's going to take quite a bit to break these. But again, it's not just this component, but your walls that you have to be worried about. But with people getting on the net, I wanted this to not fail because it's really embarrassing if things keep coming out of my walls. Let's get started. And we're going to start with that 1/8 inch, 2 inch long grabber screw. Yikes. That did not take very much. So, not quite sure where the screw went, but we did get 1.52 kilonewtons. Not too stoked on that number considering we can easily generate that on an indoor slackline. So let's go up a size. Okay, so I put a 1/4 inch lag bolt like we did inside the house with a 3/16 inch pre-drilled hole. This is 2 inches long with a fixed hanger. So basically just pulled out of the wood. The lag bolt is bent, as you can see right there. So it did put up kind of a fight. Let's find out what we got. 3.70. That is, it depends if you're doing a rodeo line or not. This could work, but if you're bouncing a lot and cyclic loading it all the time, depends how hard you surf, right? So let's go up to the next size. Okay, here's our 5/16 bolt. Wow. So these threads are not as sharp. They're kind of dull. So it bent this bolt as well. These threads, they went in really tight, but because it's, I think, galvanized or galvanized dipped, that the threads just don't stick out very much. So there's just not as much teeth, but we did get a little bit more, 5.29 kilonewtons. Next is our 3/8 inch lag bolt. It looks like our bolt broke and did not pull it out of the wood, which I would be shocked. I would be shocked if it actually pulled out. It's pretty hard to get it in there. I mean, that bolt is like all the way in there and 3/8 inch. So at least we know we got full strength out of the bolt. What was the force? Holy cow. 19.14 kilonewtons. Now, I don't know if your walls can handle 19.14 kilonewtons. So now let's figure out if you can eliminate having to buy a hanger and just go with eye bolts. We'll start with the tiniest one here. So it looks like it unravels before it comes out of the wood. And it's actually stronger than I thought, considering it is pretty small. Now make sure you don't use such a tiny one like I did here. The length, because this is only engaged in the wood about this much. Remember, you have sheetrock you're going through and you don't want it to just be inside of the sheetrock. Well, this is quite a bit bigger than this. I think that's 1/4 inch, that's 3/8. And we only got 4.02 before it unraveled, which I suppose is good enough if you're doing a rodeo line. But let's see what happens if you can do a forged eye like this. Okay, so we got 8.71 kilonewtons before the eye bolt holding this unraveled on the other side of this wood. Well, at least we know the threads are good, but geez. So we have this additional piece of wood in here. So my threads, I can tighten this. I tightened it really well. There's already 3 kilonewtons on here. And you can see how much spacing there is. This is a PLX hanger rated for 40 kilonewtons. Okay, so I realized what's gonna stop all of that from flying is that, which is connected to the thing that's about to break. What? No way. It's literally pulling it through the wood. I really don't think that's gonna happen to your wall. I think your wall is literally gonna just break before this, because like the support's right next to both of these. You'll never get that far. However, look how many kilonewtons that took. 42. That was kind of anticlimactic, other than the fact that it's really freaking cool. We just pulled that through a 2x4. Okay, Slack Snap's pretty fun. That might go on the Museum of Slack Life. So now we are gonna test shear. We have 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 5/16, and 3/8, just like we just did. Some of them go all the way through, and we are going to pull in shear so we can see if you put on the side of a wall and you're pulling not straight out, but sideways, how strong they are. Let's get started. So I have no idea where the head of that went, but we got 2.27. I guess that's similar to what our last test was with the 1/8 inch screw. Our 1/4 inch bolt broke at 9.92, about twice as strong as when we were pulling in tension. Let's find out what 5/16 does. Whoa, that one actually pulled out. Well, that's interesting. It kind of did what it does in bolt busters. I'm sure if you use different screws or different stuff, you could get different results. This is just a general idea. We did get a little bit more on that test. So this bolt sticks out of the wood. It's orientated like this. That's good to know that it can come out. Now this wasn't completely in shear, but it's fun to just see what happens. Almost 11 kilonewtons. Please keep in mind that your walls, if you're pulling in the middle of them, might be less strong than these bolts. But if you want to see how strong these bolts are, you can see it on our slack snap chart. Go to hownottohighline.com or push the pause button and study this data. So this is a lot of information for one video. If you have some slackline indoor setup tricks and tips, please let me know. Send videos preferably, and we'll compile together, oh God. We'll compile together another video of other ideas that you guys let me know about. Put in the comments below what you think and share it with somebody who's been trying to set up a slackline in their house. Yeah, Puff? Instead of you smashing your walls, make sure you smash that like button. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because we're probably going to go down this rabbit hole some more. And this way you don't miss an episode. Cheers.